And we are live. Thank you for watching my channel. This is another book review, and here's the book I'm reviewing. Being George Washington, the Indispensable Man You've Never Seen Him, by Glenn Beck. This was a great book. I highly recommend it. George Washington is a great man. And George Washington is very important because the United States of America is important to God, or at least the founding of it was. I'm sure that God picked George Washington before this world was created, because the United States of America has been on God's plans for a long time. And I'm not saying that America is sinless now or does not need to repent, and I'm not saying George Washington was sinless. But in the 1800s, God needed a country on the earth where, even if not everybody in the country respected the idea, the laws, at least on paper, in other words, in America there was freedom of religion. And God needed that so he could found his true church. My favorite story, and there's things we can learn from George Washington here. My favorite story that this book tells us about is a battle during the French-Indian War, when George Washington was in the British Army, and they, in this battle, they lost. The British lost a lot of guys, lost a lot of soldiers, had to retreat. George Washington had multiple horses shot out from under him. And this story, one important aspect of the story, later on, one of the Indian chiefs who was at that battle told George Washington, came and told him that he tried to shoot him, aimed at him multiple times and could not hit him. This Indian chief knew then that the Great Spirit was protecting him. But the Great Spirit, of course, is what the Indians call God. And he proved to be true. That Indian, he was right, because George Washington, he was the kind of commander, a brave commander, that rode a horse up to the front lines. He was in the thick of the battle. He didn't stay back a mile or a half mile from the battle and just have his lieutenants come tell him what was happening and bark out orders. He went up there to the battle. So here's the aftermath of that battle. Had I not been witness, the colonel thought, I would not have believed it. As he stared into the fire, the colonel took off his coat. Shaking it out, he found 2 holes, the shells having passed right through the fabric. He stared at them in disbelief, pushing a finger through each hole as if to convince himself that they were real. He slowly shook his head in disbelief. A small group of officers was watching. One of them, a scrawny Virginian with jet black hair, leaned forward on his knees, his face a pale yellow in the firelight. There's another one in your hat, sir. The colonel took his hat off and examined it. Yes, there was another hole. 2 shells through his holes, another through his hat. 2 horses shot out from underneath of him. He shook his head again. His fellow Virginian watched him carefully. Who are you? The man wondered aloud, a deep hesitation in his voice. The colonel turned to look at him, pushing his tattered officer coat aside. It almost seemed he tried to hide it. And he didn't answer the man. He didn't answer the other man. Who are you? The officer repeated. The colonel looked his fellow Virginian in the eyes before responding. I am George Washington. thank you for watching my video. I highly recommend you find this book, buy it, and read it, and learn about the great man, George Washington, first President of the United States of America.